The message came in at 2:14 in the afternoon, 4 days after my bypass surgery. I was sitting in a wheelchair by the hospital's front doors, a plastic bag of belongings on my lap, waiting for my son to come get me. "Dad, game's in the third quarter. Grab a cab." I read it twice, then I read it a third time, in case the pain medication was playing tricks on me. It wasn't. My son, 31 years old, living rent-free in the house I paid off in full 19 years ago, had just told a man recovering from open-heart surgery to take a taxi. I want to tell you my name, and why that text mattered so much, because context is everything here. I'm Walter. I'm 68. I spent 42 years running a small commercial printing business in Dayton, Ohio, the kind of business where you know every client by name and every employee's kid's birthday. I sold it 2 years ago for enough to retire comfortably. My wife Doreen passed 6 years back. Our son Marcus and his wife Ivy moved into my house 8 months ago, just until we get back on our feet, Marcus said. I believed him, because that's what fathers do. I called a cab myself, and by the time I got home, the locks had already been changed. For most of Marcus's life, I was the kind of father who showed up. I coached his little league team for 6 years, even the 2 seasons we didn't win a single game. I paid for his community college, then his transfer to a 4-year school, then the truck he wrecked in his 2nd year, then the truck after that. When he married Ivy, I paid for half the wedding without being asked, because Doreen wanted it that way, and because I liked Ivy well enough at the time. She was sharp, ambitious, always talking about building something for their future. 3 years ago, Marcus lost his sales job. I didn't lecture him. I told him to move back in while he figured things out. No rent, no deadline. Doreen would have wanted that too. I even signed him onto my truck insurance to save him money, and co-signed a small business loan when he floated the idea of opening a detailing shop that never opened. None of that was a mistake. I don't regret being generous. What I regret is not paying closer attention to how comfortable Marcus and Ivy had become with taking, and how little either of them had started giving back. Ivy stopped asking how my checkups went. Marcus stopped calling unless he needed something. I told myself that's just what happens with adult children. They get busy, they get distracted, they don't mean anything by it. I believed that story for a long time. I believed it right up until the moment I was sitting outside a hospital in a wheelchair with a chest full of stitches, watching the delivered and read receipts stack up under a message nobody answered. I didn't confront anyone that first night. I slept in the basement. They'd moved me there while I was still in surgery, told me the stairs would be better for my heart. I didn't argue. I was too tired, and something in me had gone very still and very quiet. 3 days later, while looking for a phone charger in the kitchen junk drawer, I found an envelope from a law office downtown. It wasn't sealed. Inside was a single sheet, a draft power of attorney document, my name typed at the top, a line for my signature at the bottom, and a note clipped to the front in Ivy's handwriting. Get Walter to sign before the appointment gets moved up. Don't mention the house yet. I sat down at my own kitchen table and read it 4 times. There was no immediate discussion of the printing business sale proceeds anywhere in that document, but there didn't need to be. Whoever drafted it had structured the language so that financial decision-making authority would transfer entirely to Marcus. Effective the date of signature, no expiration, no review clause. I'd handled enough contracts in 42 years to know exactly what that meant. It wasn't a favor, it was a lock, and I was the one being locked out. I put the envelope back exactly where I found it. I didn't say a word to either of them that night. I sat with it. I let it settle into my chest the way the ache from the surgery had, dull and constant. I remember thinking, they didn't even wait for the funeral. They didn't even wait for me to be gone. For the next 2 weeks, I became a different kind of man in that house. Quiet, slow-moving, the kind of person people stop noticing. I watched Ivy make 3 separate calls to a realtor she introduced to a neighbor as helping us list a property soon. I watched Marcus quietly move my late wife's jewelry box up from the basement storage and never bring it back down. I said nothing about any of it. I made myself smaller, more forgetful seeming, more tired than I actually was, and in doing that, I learned something valuable. People stop hiding things from someone they've already decided doesn't matter. The gift, if you can call it that, came on a Tuesday evening. Marcus left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he went to grab dinner. On the screen was an email thread between him and the same law office, discussing guardianship options if Dad's memory continues to decline. A decline that, as far as any doctor had told me, did not exist. Attached to the thread was a scanned copy of my printing business's final sale documents, the ones showing exactly what I'd walked away with. I took a photo of the screen with my phone before he came back in. My hands were steady. That surprised me more than anything else that week. The next morning, I called Renata Okafor, an attorney I'd used for business contracts for 15 years. We met at a diner 2 towns over, somewhere Marcus wouldn't recognize either of our cars. I laid it all out, the power of attorney draft, the email thread, the realtor calls, the jewelry. "This isn't confusion on their part," Renata said, tapping the photo on my phone. "This is premeditated. They're building a paper trail to make a case for incapacity, and they're doing it before you've shown a single symptom of anything. So what do I do?" "You get ahead of it," she said. "You don't fight fire with fire. You fight it with documentation and timing. We get you evaluated. A full cognitive assessment, on record, showing you're completely competent. We get every account and asset moved into a revocable trust with you as sole trustee, dated. Before any of their paperwork could claim otherwise, and we let them keep talking. Every phone call, every email, every conversation they think is private, it's evidence now. Over the following 10 days, I did exactly that. I passed the cognitive evaluation with no notes of concern. Renata restructured my assets into a trust that made any outside power of attorney claim legally meaningless, and I kept living in that basement, kept eating dinner upstairs, kept nodding along when Ivy talked about helping Dad simplify his life. They had no idea the ground had already shifted beneath them. Renata's advice was simple: let their greed do the work, so I gave them an opening. At dinner one night, I mentioned, vaguely and with just enough hesitation to sound uncertain, that I'd been thinking about putting the house in both your names, just to make things simpler. I said I needed to think it over, talk to a lawyer, get my affairs organized. Marcus and Ivy could not have moved faster if the house were on fire. Within 2 days, Ivy had booked an appointment with her own attorney to help streamline things for Dad. Within 4 days, Marcus had asked me, casually, whether I still had the original deed just in case we needed it for the paperwork. I told him it was in a safe deposit box at the bank, which was true. I told him I'd bring it by sometime this week, which was not. There was one night I nearly lost the whole plan. Ivy found the folder Renata had given me, the trust documents, tucked behind books on my nightstand while tidying up my room. She held it up when I came in from the bathroom. "What's this?" I kept my voice even. "Insurance paperwork, boring stuff." She studied my face a beat too long, then set it down and walked out. My heart, the one that had just been rebuilt 4 weeks earlier, pounded so hard I had to sit on the edge of the bed for 10 minutes before it settled. I moved the folder to the bank the next morning and never brought paperwork into that house again. 2 weeks later, I asked Marcus and Ivy to join me for what I called a family meeting about the house. Renata was there, so was Marcus's sister Delia, who had been living out of state and knew none of this until that morning. Renata laid out everything on the table: the power of attorney draft, the emails discussing my decline, the realtor calls, the cognitive evaluation confirming I was fully competent, and the trust documents, dated 3 weeks earlier, that made any of their planning irrelevant. Marcus's face went the color of old paper. "This isn't what it looks like, Dad. We were just being careful, planning ahead." "You were planning to have me declared incompetent," I said, while I still had stitches in my chest. Ivy tried a different angle. "We were going to talk to you about all of it eventually." "You already talked about it," I said. "Just not to me." There was no yelling. I didn't need it. Renata simply slid the final page across the table, a formal notice that the house, deeded solely to my trust, would need to be vacated within 60 days, and that legal counsel had been retained regarding the drafted guardianship documents. Marcus and Ivy left the house within the 60 days, into a 2-bedroom rental 30 minutes away. Ivy's real estate side venture collapsed once word got around. Small towns talk, and nobody wants an agent who tried to strip her father-in-law of his assets while he recovered from heart surgery. Marcus's detailing shop loan, still technically co-signed by me, got restructured once Renata got involved. I didn't forgive the debt, but I made sure it wasn't hanging around my neck either. Delia stayed close to me through all of it. She hadn't asked for anything, hadn't expected anything, and in the end, she was the only one of my children I fully trusted with the details of my estate going forward. Marcus called twice in the months after. I answered once. I told him I loved him, and that love didn't mean I'd forgotten what almost happened. He didn't call again after that. I still live in the same house. I fixed the porch light that had been broken for a decade. I planted tomatoes where the old rose bushes used to be, the way Doreen always wanted. Delia visits most Sundays. We don't talk about Marcus much. When we do, it's without anger, just the quiet fact of a door that closed on its own. I heard, secondhand, that Marcus is doing sales again, in another city. I hope that's true. I hope he's building something real this time, something that isn't borrowed. Here's what I've learned, and it's the only advice I have to give. Love your children generously, but never so blindly that you can't see the paperwork they leave open on the counter. Protect what you've built, not out of suspicion, but out of respect for the years it took to build it. If you've ever had to protect yourself from someone who was supposed to protect you, I'd like to hear about it in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, consider subscribing. These stories reach the people who need them most when we share them. This story contains dramatized elements for narrative purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals or events is coincidental.